Atlus came to play with the Game Awards. Not only did they show off a new trailer for Persona 3 Reload, and the game looks as good as ever, but they also debuted a new English trailer for Metaphor ReFantazio, their brand new IP coming out in fall of 2024. But with two major releases in 2024 for Atlus, what does this mean for the future, and possibly, what does this mean for Persona 6? Well, strap yourselves in, people. Let's deep dive and let's go into this and find out or procure whatever information we can from these trailers. And I want to start with Metaphor ReFantazio because I think it will be the more important release for 2024 for Atlus. I think Reload may sell more, individual games, because it has the backing of the Persona IP with it, but I think Metaphor ReFantazio is Atlus trying to, honest to God, spread their wings a little bit. I love Persona, do not get me wrong, I adore that franchise. However, it is very formulaic in terms of how the game can flow. And if you want to try new things, just having a new IP where anything is possible may just be more ideal, and I understand that, and I'm excited for Metaphor ReFantazio because it looks like a genuinely fantastic game from everything we have seen so far. I think the new art style for Metaphor is a little bit hit or miss for me. I think it's more hits than misses though. The creature design is an absolute standout as well. They just feel so over the top and magical and just possessing so much heart and soul in terms of creating them to stand out and be individualized and to also be visually striking. I know they have someone from Neon Genesis Evangelion on call for mechanical creatures. Yeah, mechanical designers Ikuto Yamashita, who was with Neon Genesis Evangelion. But to me, a lot of the creature designs, and namely the giant mech, for some reason it screams Studio Ghibli at me, like Howl's Moving Castle in a way. And then on stream, someone pointed out that it kind of reminds them of the Titans in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, with how some Titans had mechanical ships built around them, and I agree as well. There's just so much imagination in this trailer that it's honestly really striking. And that more than anything is making me excited for Metaphor ReFantazio. We all know it's a turn-based JRPG, we came to expect that. It has a few changes to the formula that Atlus is known and loved for, but that base formula is still there. But there's an aspect to it that I think is really striking and has a lot of potential for the future. You see, Persona was not a real-time combat game. It just wasn't. It was always turn-based. Metaphor, though, has elements of both. And what do I mean by that? Well, in the new trailer, the Royal Tournament, again, link in the description down below for this, you can see the main character engage in real-time combat in the overworld against certain creatures, even killing some of them. This, to me, could honestly be one of the coolest additions to the formula for Atlus combat that they've ever done. And the reason I'm saying this is, when you are farming, and you're constantly going against lower rank enemies for side quests or whatever, it can get annoying having to go into a turn-based menu, do that entire screen transition, wait for the animations to go off, another screen transition back to the overworld, and then continue where you were. Persona 5 and P5 Royal kind of changed that a little bit with the fact that in Mementos you can just run down lower rank enemies and get the rewards instantly, which was a great addition. Here though, it seems like what you can do is, if you're a high enough level or you do enough damage, you can just kill them with the real-time combat and not have to bother going into the turn-based combat. Or you can if you want to. And if you do this against higher level mobs or mobs that are on your level, you can chip away at their health a little bit. Personally, I wonder if you can inflict some kind of like status effects, if you use certain abilities or whatever, or if it's just basic /// combat. But either way, I think this has a lot of potential here. Because you still maintain the turn-based combat, but when it's appropriate, and when it's going to be at its most engaging and fun. And when you're just fighting a bunch of common enemies that you don't really care about, well then, you can just // through them and keep going on your way. I love that idea, and I want to see what they really do with it. There's so much potential for a very simple formula pivot like that to do so much for the mechanical gameplay loop in this franchise, in my opinion. And I think when you look at P3 Reload and Metaphor ReFantazio, obviously Atlus wants both of these games to succeed and to stand on their own. I also think they're testing the waters a little bit for Persona 6. I feel like everyone knows and understands that nothing Atlus puts out from here to Persona 6 will have the hype of Persona 6. Persona 6 is going to be a marketing machine for them, and they know they need to nail that. So I think it's kind of smart to have a game like Reload get a more complete or enjoyable version of P3 out there that's more modernized. And you have this new IP that you can work on in the future, see how that sticks, but also test a bunch of new ideas and direction pivots for pacing, storytelling, gameplay, whatever. And you can test and see what works, and then take what works and incorporate that somehow, in some way, into P6. I think it's a very smart approach. This is also a very MMO approach, in my opinion, where if you played massively multiplayer online role-playing games for an extended period of time, like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV, you can see when they introduce a new system or mechanic, how that idea may be retrofitted or utilized again in the future, but with feedback taken into account. I think Atlus is doing something similar when it comes to Persona 6. And while I want P6 as much as the next guy, I'm willing to wait a little bit if it means that the game is going to be an even better product when all the feedback can be taken into account from these two games. We've already seen Atlus do this in the past, in my opinion. P5 was an incredible game by itself, but P5 Royal took pretty much all of my criticisms that I had with P5, took them into account, and made an even better product. It's not perfect, don't get me wrong, but nothing ever is. And it's the pursuit of ever greater heights and becoming even better that I find so fascinating with game sequels. Metaphor ReFantazio, in particular, definitely feels like it's more inspired by Shin Megami Tensei than necessarily Persona, but there's definitely some Persona elements to this when it comes to the party members and just overall dialogue and navigation and forming these bonds with different characters. I think in terms of tone and world design, it feels like it's more inspired by Shin Megami Tensei, but in terms of dialogue and characterization, it's more inspired by Persona, while still trying to be its own individual IP that can stand on its own. I'm also just kind of glad that Atlus isn't resting on their laurels and sticking with only Shin Megami Tensei and Persona. I'm glad they're trying something new here and taking a bunch of risks. Apathy is one of the biggest killers for games, in my opinion, on top of stagnation, or changing things for absolutely no reason, but with a new IP, you can test the waters and just see what sticks and what people like and what people don't like. There seems to be a lot when it comes to Metaphor ReFantazio, not just in terms of combat and story, but also just in terms of character interactions, like rallying the troops or rallying people in your city, giving various speeches, cooking food, and a whole bunch of other things. This seems like it's going to be a very feature-dense game in a lot of ways, and I'm particularly excited about that aspect to it. It's a very stylized game, and I think the stylization choices will be a little bit hit or miss for some people. I don't expect them to be present for P6. I think this is going to be specifically to differentiate Metaphor ReFantazio, for better or for worse. I think most of the stylistic ideas going on with Metaphor are really cool and exciting. The creature design, the sense of scale that the world and enemies can have, the sheer imagination and creativity on display in these trailers really makes me err on the side of optimism here. And maybe it's just me, but it does kind of feel like the game has this weird filter over it that I'm not that big of a fan of. I think it's just a stylistic choice when it comes to the UI. You mainly see it on the outside corners, and you really only see it when you're actually controlling the main character. In cutscenes, it's just not there, so I wonder if that will be a toggle or whatever. And like, if we wanted to get a little bit nitpicky here, we could just say the texture quality is a bit hit or miss in certain regards and areas, but one, the game's not finished yet, but also two, even if this is the final product, I still think the game looks cool. I still think the game looks good overall. And it could also just be an artistic choice to go along with the overall aesthetic of the game, and when it's all taken into consideration together, it could be cool as a complete package, and I'm willing to give the game a try for that. Like I said, like, this is a minor thing for me. It's not gonna be like that big of a deal. And I'd rather Atlus try something new than just resting on their laurels and doing nothing. There's a lot of cool ideas in Metaphor. There really are, and I want to play this game so badly. I think Atlus, over time, personally, I think Tactica's a little bit of a miss, but it's still a fine game by itself. But I think Atlus is one of those companies that have earned my optimism when it comes to games. They haven't really ever let me down, and I've enjoyed or loved pretty much everything they've put out. So I think my optimism will remain until they give me a reason not to be optimistic, and I just don't think they've given me good enough of a reason to be pessimistic. This looks good. P3 Reload looks amazing as well. But I think especially when it comes to these two games, criticism constructive criticism at that, will be pivotal, because I think Atlus is genuinely trying to make their games better and better, and they want to take that feedback into consideration when it comes to P6. That's just my opinion, and from what I've read online, possibly from someone who has a leaky faucet, wink wink, nudge nudge. But even without that, you just look at these games by themselves, and if you've played video games long enough and you know how companies kind of think, they are releasing 2 big games in 1 calendar year. I think both of these games by themselves will be complete experiences that are fun and interesting and engaging and rewarding, but I also think they want to test the waters and see what sticks. I also think that's a smart play. So it'll be interesting to see where this series goes from here, and how Metaphor comes out, and what kind of reactions people have to the game. I'm hoping it's a winner. I would love to have a 3rd main IP for Atlus. I'm optimistic, like I said. And with that, I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making that video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day, go play some video games if you can, and as always, I'll see you all next time. Leave a comment down below, by the way, with what title are you most interested in? P3 Reload or Metaphor ReFantazio? I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions. And what has piqued your curiosity the most when it comes to the game you're most anticipating? Let me know. Again, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.